I hope you all are having a wonderful day. My name is Yupari, and I'd like to invite you into yet another portrait drawing demonstration. And in this portrait drawing demonstration, we're just going to be working on, again, just pastel paper, just using, I believe this is a Nitram Fusains charcoal. But in any case, if you want to know exactly what materials I'll be using, you can go ahead and scroll down to the description box below, and I'll have all of that information typed up for you. So the first thing I want to think about is the overall composition. So just a large shape. So I'm thinking I'm going to place the back of the hair maybe about here. Let's say the top of the head, I don't know, maybe about here. There's a little angle coming out like this. Now usually I would recommend to start off rather light with your lines, but for these purposes, I think it picks up a little better on the camera if I make these marks a little bit darker. So I'm going to, for my initial block in, I'm going to be making my marks a little bit darker. Now what I'm looking at is just simple shape. I'm abstracting what I'm looking at in terms of just a few simple straight lines and angles. I'm pretty much about an arm's length away from my paper, and moving quite rapidly, just using my eye to make these decisions of where everything is going to fit. And at this point, the drawing is very fluid. I can move anything that I want to move quite easily. So let's suppose that the head is going to be, say, from here to there. And this is going to be, I guess, the hair, this portion of the hair coming down. There's even a little more of it over here. Just a few simple little shapes. So I'm going to be working in a very mass-like fashion, or working with large tones. So now I'm starting to go in and place a tone for the hair. I'm working on fairly light pastel paper. I think this is cream colored pastel paper, not quite white, but it's actually very close in value to that. So the first thing that my eye notices is these large dark patterns. Whenever I glance at the image, I see these dark patterns right away, and I'm just letting my eye be the judge of where to put these simple masses. Just large masses. And now we're going to put in a little center line. And so the model is, I'd say, pretty close to straight, but a little bit 3/4. So we're going to be seeing a little bit more of this side than this side of the model. So let's place the center line roughly about there. Everything at this stage can be adjusted. The entire drawing is malleable. I'm thinking of this as just a large structure that can be sculpted. So let's suppose that that's one eye socket. Another eye socket over here, just walking our way down the portrait. Now here's going to be a little indication for the bottom of the nose. Little concavity of the eye socket there. And even let's place in a little shape for where the mouth might fit. And now the way that I'm going to be working is that I'm going to be basically throwing the shapes on there, just optically observing where everything goes. And this is going to be kind of the first guesstimation of where the features are going to fit. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and switch to my stump. And then I'm going to kind of mush everything together. Now, typically I recommend to start off a little bit lighter with your mark making, so that an instance like this, I can come in a little bit with a darker line where I want to, say, build on top of that little shape. But again, I'm working a little bit darker this time because I noticed in my other videos, my other drawing videos, it was actually pretty hard to see the initial block in. So let's go ahead and just fill in this tone now. There's going to be a simple little tone here, working very, very freely. No fear at all. Let's go ahead and put in this shape here. And charcoal is a very, very forgiving medium. It allows you to work in this kind of way. We can imagine we're even just laying down a tone on the paper, and it's kind of just practice thinking that way. Just laying down a tone of which I'm going to construct a portrait on top of. So again, let's go ahead and just look at the interconnectivity of the eye sockets. Just using a simple straight line for that. So now at this point, I'm going to go in with the stump, and I'm going to make a little shape there for where the eye socket's going to fit. Let's go ahead and just stump all of this in. Now, if you'll notice with my stump, I have a dark side of my stump with the tape, and I have a light side for the stump. So the light side I'll use later on to do things such as this. I can actually subtract a little bit with the light side of the stump. So let's just go ahead and just unify all of these dark masses. This is very similar to painting. This is a really good exercise to do if you want to, say, practice on your oil painting technique. This is very similar. This handles very similar to oil paints. Little shape down here, unifying all of these masses. Now switching to the light portion of the stump. See that? I'm going to be kind of mushing the charcoal into place here for the glabella. Little tiny shape there for the glabella. Moving all the way down here now. Super simple. And that's the goal, keeping it simple and easy to work with. Just relax. Sit back and relax with the portrait. Nothing to fear. Let's go ahead and just stump all this together. Now we're going to be bouncing kind of back and forth between line and mass. So I'll go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So here, a little side plane for the nose. I think it's at an angle like this. So right now we're working with linear. So just adding a linear construct on top of the mass. Remember, mass is just large tones. And it's actually easier to see proportions and things like that with mass as opposed to simply line. But I'll show you how we can combine both mass, all of this, and line together to facilitate the development of the portrait. So little angle here for the eyebrow, coming at somewhat of an angle like this. And so the trick is going to be that I'm actually going to stump this away after I place it down. So I'm going to be working with kind of guesstimations, if you will. So we're going to think of this as a very laid-back approach to portrait drawing, kind of a series of superimposed sketches on top of one another, as opposed to carefully tracing out where everything fits. I mean, we can work that way too, but with this way, we're being a little less cautious. Little shape into here. Now for the nose, let's say that the nose will fit roughly about there. Simple little angle for that. Very simple. Let's go ahead and put in a little shape for the iris. Using the kneaded eraser, we're going to subtract a little bit of light there. Don't worry, we're going to stump this away, and we're going to build the portrait in this kind of fashion. Very simple little dark shapes there, almost like a cartoon. So here we're going to have the philtrum, and I'm thinking of the length of the philtrum, so it's maybe this long from the root of the nose to the top of the mouth. So with the mouth, I'm not going to stress too much about any kind of tiny little details. Just going to place a shape in there. Just roughly placing in a shape. So again, adding line on top of mass. And then we're going to switch from line to mass again. And then so on and so forth. We're going to keep working back and forth between the two. Here's a little boundary here. For the bottom of the eye socket, side plane of the eye socket, here we're going to have the the zygomatic region. So that is the cheekbone region. Imagine this going all the way across in that kind of fashion. Concavity of the eye socket right there. Let's go ahead and spell out with the line the plane division for the chin. So here's kind of a top plane, side plane. Now we're moving under. Bottom of the chin. Thinking of the angle that the mandible is making. This wraps into here. And imagine again the zygomatic bone, cheekbone. All right, now using a horizontal from the eye to the ear, just to try and place the ear optically. And now I think that I'm going to want to subtract a little bit here. All right, so now let's go ahead, actually first put another little shape in here for the mouth. Moving very freely about the portrait. All right, so now let's switch back into mass. So I know this is going to be a little nuts, but we're going to build the mass surrounding the linear construct. So what that means is I'm going to take the charcoal off of this that I used to draw in the outlines surrounding the eye, and I'm going to pull that charcoal down here. See that? I'm just pulling it down here and creating the bottom plane for the eye socket. See how we're creating a little mass there? Now it's up to me how much of this I want to take out. So let's go ahead and with the lighter area of the stump, actually, let's just switch back to the darker area of the stump. Just create a little plane change here. So another mass. See how we're using the outline? Very simple there. Let's go ahead and stump the eyebrows. See how we're not completely taking out the outline, but rather we're building mass using the outline. Light portion of the stump. Let's do the same kind of thing here. Let's mush these two shapes together. See how it creates a completely new plane, and that is the concavity of the eye socket. And again, let's just take this dark here and create another little dark shape here for the side of the concavity of the eye socket. See how this is a very relaxing way to construct a portrait. Not worried about literally going in there and describing each and everything just because we think that that's how it works. Of course, it can work that way. But in this fashion, we're really just taking our time and relaxing, moving back and forth between line and mass. So again, I'm going to take this line, I'm going to stump it into here, creating a halftone, creating a simple little dark light there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the nose. Use this dark now from this little outline to create this little boundary. See how we're starting to create that little boundary for the bulb of the nose, and we're going to even create a little divot in here for the bulb of the nose. Now we're going to switch to the clean portion of this stump, and we're going to actually add in a value right about here. So we're going to add in a mass now. for the wing of the nose. Side of the nose over there. Now I'm actually going to get the chamois cloth and subtract a little bit here. Just subtracting a tiny bit here. Now we have this little darker shape, so let's just take the side of the outline of the bottom of the nose to create this dark shape beneath the nose. Let's just stump this into the paper. Now with the light side of the stump, I'm actually going to subtract a tiny bit from the shadow. And now I'm going to take the charcoal right from the mouth and just add it back into the area that I subtracted. And the reason that I did that was to go in actually with a line again and reassess this shape. See that? Switching back and forth between mass and line. So let's go ahead even right here and let's just pick up some charcoal. Again, using the light area of the stump. Going to switch back to the dark area of the stump and just put in this little tone here. Switching back to the light area of the stump, creating this little plane here. Now we're going to switch gears back into line. So one line here. Here we have a little division for the bottom of the mouth. And I'm kind of thinking of the structure of this whole orbicularis oris. So the little structure here that contains the mouth. It actually has to move down a little bit. Let's not forget the upper lip. So let's take a little bit of this charcoal that we added on by creating that outline. See how we're creating a mass for the upper lip. Very simple. Now let's put some more information into the hair. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is just reassess this shape here. So again, just switching from line to mass. So again, I just eliminated the line that was there, but at the same time, I also created another tone. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead, switch back to line. And I'm just reassessing this outside shape. So it comes out a little further. Goes in. And then you know what? This shape, actually, sometimes you know what I do? I relate the corner of one side of the mouth, so say this, and I drop a vertical all the way down to the neck. And they almost kind of match. So that means that that shape needed to come out. Oops, I'm gonna switch to the dark side of the stump. Another little tip here for the stump, try not to touch the corners of the stump. I accidentally just touched it with my hand. So just cleaning it off with the chamois cloth. Alright, so for the hair, I'm going to subdivide these regions in terms of light and dark. So let's go ahead and start with the dark. So switching into line, we're just using line to separate light and dark patterns. And then you know what we're going to do next. So fill that in over there. There's a nice little partition of the hair right over there. Straight lines and angles. This actually comes in a little bit like that. And this goes in, out, tapers like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in these lines with a mass. And then, as you know, we're going to switch to the stump. Just fill in these dark shapes. Very simple. Now switching to the stump. I'm actually going to put a lot of charcoal onto here. A whole lot of charcoal, and that is because remember I kind of cleaned off the dark side of my stump. So I'm actually adding some of the charcoal back. So kind of doing two things at once, really. Adding the charcoal back to the dark side of my stump and drawing in these shapes. So here we have these little dark partitions for the hair. Very simple. Stumping that into place, and you know what, there's even a darker shape out here, right about there. And I'm spending quite a bit more time on the model's hair than I usually do with my portraits. I just think that the shapes surrounding her hair are pretty neat, so I thought I would elaborate a little bit more into that. Let's go ahead and just, with the stump, create another dark tone there. So again, back to line, simple little dark shape here. Stump that in. And at the same time, create another little tone here. There's even a darker tone surrounding the little outside shape here. Lots of interesting shapes. Again, just stumping all that together. Some more dark over here. Stumping that together. Again, adding another little shape. Now we're going to use the chamois cloth just to pull out some lights. Simple little light shapes for the highlights of the hair, kind of in a little S pattern. Somewhat like that. This is really the joy of charcoal. Can move so quickly. Back to the stump. Just stump this shape together. Just let this area be pretty soft, and let's actually use the clean side of the stump for these shapes here. Super simple. See that? We're using the clean side of the stump. Now I actually see that I need a little more dark surrounding the corners, so let's go ahead and fill in just a very simple little abstract pattern there. Fill it in. Switch back to the stump. I'm telling you, this is as fun as it looks. It's a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and create a little edge there. And of course, let's not forget this dark. Try to make it as dark as can be. And of course over here, another simple little dark shape. This actually comes to about there. Back to the stump. Just pushing all that together. Now let's go ahead and get the stump. Let's say the light side of the stump. Let's use the charcoal from that line. Let's switch back to the dark side of the charcoal. So let's go ahead and take the charcoal from this little division, this little subdivision, and add it into the shadow. And at the same time, kind of creating more definition now for the terminator line. Remember, the terminator line just means basically the line terminating light and shadow. That's all that means. So it's a little bit of charcoal with the dark side of the stump. Let's go ahead and add this mass here. Simple little dark shape. Now we're going to, again, kind of work back and forth between line and mass. So I'm going to be taking the charcoal from these lines, these outlines, and using it to create these little tones. See, I'm kind of creating a softer edge here. And even over here, we need a little bit of a soft edge just before the planes turn in towards the lips. And again, just kind of carving away at this shape here. Now using the light side of the stump, just going to even all of this out. Just evening all of that out. Now again, I'm going to take from this outline, let's say using the dark side of the stump, just take some of this and create just a simple little tone with a light touch. This is going to create our little transitioning tone. See how the forms turn away from the light, and as they turn away from the light, they get darker. Let's even use the same thing. Let's get a little bold and put in this turning plane here. And this plane, this is actually the side plane of the cheekbone. So what I'm going to be doing with this actually is I'm going to be going in a little darker than I would want, and then lightening it up. So see now how we're going to have a little plane change here, giving us the structure of the side plane of the face. Even a tiny little bit of it here. Now the way I'm going to soften that is by using the light side of the stump. See that? Very simply. And now we're going to be getting some very subtle transitions of value. Doesn't take much in terms of value to get the form to read. So again, just using the light side of the stump, kind of softening that edge there. We're going to do the same kind of thing towards the bottom. So this is going to go down a little further. Again, switching back to the linear. Little shape here. See this little tiny shape. Now after indicating that, I'm going to switch back to the dark brush and use the charcoal that I applied onto the paper by creating that outline, just to create a little tone. Very simple. Now I'm going to go in with the chamois cloth. Subtract a little bit of light for the upper lip. Switch back to the clean side of the stump. And just create a very simple little transition of tone here. Very simple. Even a little dark shape over here. Super simple. Now I'm going to go in with the clean side or the light side of the stump. Pull this edge up a little bit. And then I'm going to come back in with a kneaded eraser. And we're going to have this little highlight. And it's also going to sharpen that edge a tiny bit. Now we're going to do the same kind of thing over here. So with the clean side of the stump, we're just kind of evening out all of this tone. Now switching back to the dark side of the stump, adding in a little bit of a darker tone here for the side of the nose, and even a tiny bit for the bulb of the nose. Now I'm going to switch to the kneaded eraser. We're going to have just a tiny little highlight there. Just a tiny little highlight. Back to the dark side of the stump. Again, let's take from this little linear, this little line, and use that charcoal to create this transitioning tone. I'm going to use the clean side of the stump. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and just add that shape back in. And with the dark side of the stump, let's go ahead and just apply a very clean gradation of tone here. It's going to be a little darker over there. Okay, now let's put in a little highlight. Just using the kneaded eraser here. Tiniest little highlight. I don't want it to jump out. I just want a little tiny glimpse of it. There's even a little glimpse of light over here on the side of the tear duct. Very simple. Now with the charcoal, I see that this shape probably needs to move up. So let's go switch back to linear, describing this shape, and then go back in with the stump. And using the charcoal we added by constructing that line, we're creating an even softer gradation here for the concavity of the eye socket. Now with the clean side of the stump, we're going to need to subtract a little bit of light here, and just a little bit, and that's why we're using the stump. Remember, the stump subtracts less light than the chamois. Let's even subtract a little bit over here. Very simple. And of course, let's use the charcoal from this line here to create another simple little gradation of tone. That needs to cut in a little more. Not a problem. Let's put in some of the tinier shapes now. So with the little sharpened point, let's go ahead and just put in the pupil. Just a little shape there for the pupil. And the dark of the iris. Just very little tiny bits of information. And now with the kneaded eraser, let's put in the little highlight here for the eye. Let's see, it goes right about here. Right about there. Same thing with the other eye, minus the highlight. So we have dark shape for the pupil. And the dark of the eye, you know what? I'm going to leave it kind of simplified. Now for the ear, let's go ahead and just put in a tiny little shape here. Tiny little dark shape there. Draw in this little shape here. I think this is the helix, and then this is the anti-helix here. But regardless of what the name is for this anatomical shape. Let's just look at the values. Just a simple little dark shape right there. I'm going to switch to the light portion of the stump. Just very simply just put in that value for the back of the anti-helix. Just put in this little outline. Now let's go ahead and put in a little tone for the background. So I'm going to use soft vine charcoal. I believe this is a Winsor & Newton brand. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the background now. Now that we have the background tone filled in, I think I'm going to put just a little bit of information in for the clothing. So let's go back to this shape that we established earlier. Follows through somewhat out like this. Goes in about like that. Very simple there. There's even a little fold here. Little fold for the drapery. So let's just go ahead now and just fill in the rest of this with the charcoal. Super simple. Going back in with the stump. Just going to stump all of that in. Just trying to even out the charcoal. Now back in with the lines. See how we're moving even in the clothing back and forth between linear and tone? Put that dark shape back in there. I think that goes a little further down. And even with the stump, I'm going to just add a few little kind of traces of value on the side here. And this is purely just for the sake of aesthetics. Very simple. Let's fix that little shape there. There's actually a shadow here. I should probably put that in. A little cast shadow from the hair. Let's fill that in. Now squinting down, I see that the shadow is pretty light, but what needs to get darker is this tone here. Let's go in again. One of the last things I'll do is just kind of pick and choose which areas that I want to leave a very strong outline. So maybe here, up there, maybe a little bit over here. Just trying to figure out which areas I want to leave very definitive outline. So let's say perhaps here, just for the sake of aesthetic. And with that, we have the conclusion of this portrait drawing demonstration. I really hope that these videos are helping you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.